celebrating 48 years on the air. Award-winning Farm Week is a production of Mississippi State University Extension.
Today on Farm Week, one more chance to see a field day in Monticello, Mississippi, a memorial to a man who left us far too soon. In Southern Gardening, Eddie's in Vicksburg with a raised bed garden full of beauty and structure. In the market, Zach's got the crop situation, good things being said about the Magnolia State, and rebuilding the American clothing industry with Mississippi cotton. Farm Week starts right now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Zach Ashmore.
And I'm Mike Russell. Great to have you with us again here on Farm Week. Last week, we told you about the White House release of the MAHA report, Make America Healthy Again. It's a 73-page assessment and call to action initiated by the President's executive order in February.
It was a comprehensive assessment focused in large part on chronic childhood disease blamed on ultra-processed foods and cumulative use of chemicals.
Reaction to the report came from all directions, including farm groups who said they had no input into the report's creation.
Glenn Thompson and John Bozeman, respective chairmen of the House Ag and Senate Ag committees, said in a statement, quote, "We share President Trump's vision for a healthier nation. However, we are troubled by the initial findings of the MAHA Commission assessment and their impact on America's farmers and ranchers."
USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins wrote in part, quote, "We must do more to improve the health outcomes of our kids and families." And President Trump knows agriculture is at the heart of the solution. America's farmers and ranchers dedicate their lives to the noble cause of feeding their country and the world, and in doing so have created the safest and most abundant and affordable food supply in the world.
American Farm Bureau President Zippy Duvall wrote, quote, "It is deeply troubling for the White House to endorse a report that sows seeds of doubt and fear about our food system and farming practices, then attempts to celebrate farmers and the critical role they play in producing the safest food supply in the world. Farmers are identified as critical partners, yet were excluded from the development of the report."
And the National Pork Producers Council President Dwayne Statler said efforts that not only exclude agriculture's input, but also undermine the work of farmers serving our nation are misguided and detrimental to all who care about facts and truth. Inflammatory rhetoric and distortions meant to galvanize attention to achieve particular ideological outcomes are harmful and undermine the world-class safety and reliability of the American food system. Some legacy media says sources cited in the report were non-existent. The White House blamed what it called formatting errors for that. We'll follow up. A couple of weeks ago, we brought you this story this week because so many people asked about it, an encore. The story of Hortense and Bubba Bass, known by many around the state as selfless tree farm owners who held field day after field day on their property in Monticello, Mississippi. In 2017, while former co-anchor Leighton Spann featured them on Farm Week, Bubba passed away not long after. Recently, after nearly 7 years, Hortense hosted what will likely be her last field day, a memorial to her late husband on his birthday in late April. I was honored to be invited. Here's just a little of what I experienced that day.
The field days and the things we do with the kids, we do that for us, not the kids. That's just one of the benefits, because we enjoy it more than they do, I'm sure.
A few gentle words from Bubba Bass in 2017, just a few months before he passed away. He and his wife Hortense acquired their land, ultimately some 350 acres in Lawrence County, in 1975. It had been in Bubba's family since the 1800s, and over the years the two made a habit of hosting young children, doing everything in their power to help those kids learn about and appreciate everything their land had to offer. Bubba and Hortense thought of it as a community family affair.
so then they're not competing for oxygen or water or nutrients that they need.
Today, another big crowd on the Bass Tree Farm. Almost 700 people attended, including hundreds of fifth graders and longtime friends and colleagues.
It's just, just seeing the children learning from all of this, because they're getting to see things that they don't get to see at school. You see, it's an outing for them to learn different things about nature. They're learning what God has given us, being outdoors and learning the different things about the land, the artifacts. Like today we have a biologist, we have a soil scientist, we have gun safety, we have just a variety of different events for them to learn that they don't get to see. And look at them, they're not with their cell phones, you see. They're just, look how excited they are. They're learning.
You get to truly have an impact on kids, because we're always surprised, or I'm always surprised at how little interaction they have with wildlife. So it's an opportunity to kind of teach kids very basic concepts about wildlife, introduce them to the wildlife that's indigenous to their area and encounters that they may have. And it's kind of fun getting to see their eyes light up when they learn certain things about wildlife.
Are firearms dangerous?
Yes, sir.
You said no, didn't you?
It's a multifaceted adventure for the kids, learning everything from firearm safety.
When we set up the flight mission, it flew each one of these flight lines, one direction and then the other.
To forestry technology, to wild hog trapping. Everywhere you looked, kids were learning and having fun. Needless to say, a day like today takes a lot of work. It always did. And consulting forester Stephen Dickey, longtime arborist for the Bass Tree Farm, was quick to give credit where it's due.
I would say it's pretty special. Only Hortense Bass could pull something like this off. This many kids, this many supervisors and government officials, and in Monticello, Mississippi, unbelievable.
What would Bubba think about today?
Oh, he'd be smiling. He's smiling from heaven. He's smiling. Because this is what we cater to. We cater to, having the children come to the farm and so they could learn about the nature.
Quite an event there in Monticello. Congratulations one more time to Hortense Bass, like Steve Dickey said in that piece, for being able to put together such a large event. Kids came from as far away as Louisiana, Tennessee, and Texas. I'm sure Bubba was smiling from heaven. And thanks to the Lawrence County Press for its coverage of Farm Week in a recent issue. We're honored to be mentioned.
On the lighter side, in this week's Southern Gardening segment, Eddie Smith is in western Mississippi for a look at how raised bed gardens can be both beautiful and functional. Here's Eddie with a closer look.
Southern Gardening is in Vicksburg, Mississippi, at the home of Beatty Williams. In her backyard, Beatty has created a beautiful space filled with raised beds where she grows both vegetables and flowers. Let's take a closer look. The garden features several raised beds with pathways that make it easy to tend the plants and harvest produce. Around the perimeter, a mix of shrubs and ornamental plants add structure and beauty. Flowering pollinator-friendly plants like yarrow help attract beneficial insects, contributing to the healthy garden ecosystem. A standout feature is the metal statue in the center of the garden, cleverly repurposed as a support for a tomato plant, making it both functional and artistic. One raised bed includes a combination of peppers and marigolds. The bold scent of the marigolds helps deter unwanted insect pests. Another bed showcases vibrant Swiss chard alongside lush green squash plants. The contrast in colors is striking. Beatty keeps her garden productive year-round. As soon as one crop is harvested, another is planted in its place. This garden is a great example of how raised beds can be both beautiful and bountiful. I'm Eddie Smith, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Southern Gardening.
We'll take a break right here, but don't go away. Coming up on our Farm Week feature, rebuilding the American clothing industry. In the early days, Americans made their own clothes. Then 150 years ago, the apparel industry boomed. But more recently, a severe slide and a low point after COVID. Now, are things turning around? We'll visit two companies where hope springs eternal thanks to a resurgence and Mississippi's prized crop, cotton. Putting our pants back on, coming up on Farm Week. Don't go away.
I believe in people and their hopes, their aspirations and their faith. I believe in my own work and in the opportunity I have to make my life useful to humanity. I believe that education is a lifelong process, and the greatest university is the home. That my success as a teacher is proportional to those qualities of mind and spirit that give me welcome entrance to the homes of the families that I serve. Because I believe these things, I am an extension professional.
I believe in people and their hopes, their aspirations and their faith. I believed that education, of which extension work is an essential part, is basic in stimulating individual initiative, self-determination, and leadership. I believe that these are the keys to democracy, and that people, when given facts they understand, will act not only in their self-interest, but also in the interest of society. I believe in intellectual freedom to search for and present the truth without bias and with courteous tolerance towards the views of others. Because I believe these things, I am an extension professional.
You know, pretty much across the board, but not by a dramatic amount. We'll get into it and why. But first, the numbers. What were the week's biggest gains and losses? And then a look at crop techniques and ag's technological importance. And finally, what's moving the livestock markets? An expert weighs in to explain. So, markets closed the week on a downswing, both row crops and livestock affected, with only one exception. Let's take a look. The week's only gain, lean hogs up nearly 3 1/4 cents. That's more than a 3% increase from the previous week. The week's biggest loss, soybean oil, down over 2 1/4 cents. That's nearly a 5% decrease from the previous week. So, we're well into planting season. USDA says over 3/4% complete for corn, soybeans, and rice. So, what are some factors to help your crop succeed? Phil Mishner of Dynagrow recently appeared on the Mississippi Crop Situation podcast to give his advice.
And, you know, the thing for me with soybeans, what I look at is you have to have canopy closure. That's what's critical, right? Because if you run water on soybeans that has not closed canopy, the next thing that you get to do the next week is you get to go back and kill grass. I think we need to have that thing pretty well knitted up, that canopy pretty well closed up by the time we start getting serious about pouring water to it. Otherwise, all we're going to do is create more work for ourselves. So we have to time that. You know, we have to think about all that together. Now, there are going to be scenarios that are going to arise where we need to run water. You know, regardless of what we're going to have to do on the backside, we're dry enough. It doesn't look like we're going to have that in 2025. You know, there are years where we have to run a rescue application of water early on, and then it may be 4 weeks before we run it again, but we had to do something to get it salvaged and get it saved. And the folks I've seen do that and do that effectively have reaped the benefits of that as well. I feel this way about all crops. Everybody needs to be doing a little bit of experimentation here, there, and yonder on in their own environment with their own farm and everything else. If you're not looking to adapt and innovate a little bit, I think you're gonna find yourself left behind. And because we've been adaptive and because we've been innovative, we've seen these soybean yields do what they've done over the last couple of decades. And I don't want to stymie that anytime in the near future. I carry a bit of a chip sometimes because when I moved to the South, it was everybody was kind of like, well, they're behind. Let me tell you, my experience in the South and in Mississippi in particular, the Delta in particular, on top of that, we're as innovative and technologically forward as any aspect of the country. I still, U.S. agriculture is second only to the U.S. military in the amount of applied technology that's used in its day-to-day operation. We use more technology, more applied technology in modern U.S. agriculture than probably just about any other industry that's out there. Shoot, you think about the drone sprayings that are going on at this point in time. That's a huge step forward in what we're able to do. But outside of the U.S. military, I'd really struggle to find another industry that's operating with the level of applied technology that what we are in U.S. agriculture. And that's across all crops. That's not necessarily soybean specific, but it's just something to really think about, what a big deal it is. And a lot of that innovation happens, again, because of cropping cycles and because of the fact that we get to get in the ground earlier and everything else. A lot of that early parts of that innovation happened down here. And it's something to be proud of for us as an industry.
So, livestock prices also falling recently, with lean hogs seeing a little push. What was the cause? Market analyst Naomi Bloom says it's markets reacting to rumor, specifically screwworm, appearing in U.S. cattle, and customers choosing cheaper meats.
Well, we saw a quieter week with cattle for cash, but the big hype this week was that false rumor of the screwworm coming into Missouri. And so what that demonstrated was how a rumor, true or false, can really make the market fall apart. And that's how this cattle complex is so going to be varied upon headlines, and the market is going to be just really ready to react and respond to things. So we had news this week that cash was, a little steady. We saw box beef demand okay, exports were okay, but traders are cautious to take the market higher until we get some bigger, concrete reasons of still strong demand showing up. And the bearish key reversal on daily charts from a couple weeks ago is still out there as a major topping signal. So we'll see what the cattle complex brings next week. And just a reminder, on Monday is going to be expanded daily limits for the cattle complex. So that'll just add to the volatility. Well, the hog market has really just been working higher overall. It had a pullback last week and a little bit earlier this week, but we finished the week with some strength. We had decent export numbers this week, and exports overall have been pretty strong, and the consumer demand, I think, has been there in general, just because we're looking for cheaper substitutes for beef. And I know that a lot of people have been using pork more. And in fact, I was at a spring tailgate for Platteville, and one of the moms was grilling pork chops, and I had not seen that at a tailgate before. So their demand is there, and the consumers are starting to respond. And the hog market, the funds are long now, and we'll see if they do any profit taking as summer goes on, or if that pork demand is just going to keep on improving.
And that's it for a deeper look into the markets. Quite a few things in flux right now. The cattle industry still dealing with screwworm, while row crops adapting to a wet spring. Mike?
Thanks, Zach. With all of the turmoil in the economy and the relentless tug of war and trade, it's easy to understand why some industries have nearly flatlined, American clothing manufacturing among them. But there's increasing reason for hope, and Mississippi cotton could play a role. Colleen Bradford-Krantz has more.
In the early days of the nation's history, most clothing worn by Americans was made at home. Mass manufacturing of clothes didn't take off until the late 1880s, rapidly growing into a booming industry centered in New York City. Apparel companies soon began to crop up elsewhere, including in distant rural communities with a nearby supply of cotton or with other industries whose workers needed certain types of clothing.
We started in 1903 Shawnee, Oklahoma was a big railroad town at the time. It had two different railroads, the Rock Island and the Santa Fe railroads both met here. And the railroad workers needed something to wear, and so we got started by producing jeans for the railroad workers to wear.
In recent decades, however, the once thriving U.S. clothing industry has undergone a disheartening historic shift. 30 years ago, there were more than 741,000 production employees below the level of supervisor. That number has since slid over 92%. The job count hit a low point during the COVID pandemic, with just 49,100 apparel workers in April of 2020.
Apparel manufacturing in the United States has always been important for rural America, and it's something that probably reached its high point in the 1960s and 1970s. And since then, we've really been losing a lot of apparel factories, the majority of them.
However, there is reason for cautious optimism. Other than that dip during COVID, the industry's apparel manufacturing employment levels may have begun to level off in recent years, hovering around 65,000. What has been left behind is a kind of camaraderie among those who survived a period when most clothing manufacturing moved overseas.
The industry for American-made products probably is growing more and more amicable. More and more people see it as something that we want everyone to thrive in. And so probably in the 60s and 70s, you had a lot more competition where people were fighting and actually trying to steal sales from other people. But we think it's great when anybody that makes something in the United States has sales, and we want to encourage other people to start a company.
Today, over 98% of the clothing sold in the U.S. retail market is imported, the majority from Asia. Roundhouse, which has about 30 employees, survived by keeping expenses carefully under control. The company, which David Antosh owns with his father and brother, made it a priority to keep their American-made jeans and overalls affordable. They sell over 100,000 pairs of jeans annually, using 100% American-grown cotton. They don't advertise, and the owners can often be found working on the factory floor.
We have employees here who have spent their lives working here and know how to make jeans as quickly and as efficiently as possible, because our whole goal is to make affordable American-made jeans. We try to keep everything here at $59.
Roundhouse has found that consumers are seeking out American-made clothing as it becomes harder to find. Over 90% of the company's international sales are done in Japan, where customers are willing to pay for the heavier denim and the attention to detail. 700 miles to the north, Fox River Mills in northern Iowa continues to manufacture its socks and other apparel in the community of Osage, which has a population of about 3,500.
Fox River Mills is the oldest operating sock mill in the United States. It was founded 120 years ago along the Fox River in Appleton, Wisconsin, and ended up here in Osage, Iowa. Continually operating, never stopped, didn't stop for any of the major events that we've seen throughout our history, continued to knit products. So I'm very proud of that heritage, for sure.
Warren says their niche market of specialty and high-quality socks, ranging from military to high-tech to casual, as well as knitting products for other companies, has helped them survive.
With the globalization of trade and trade agreements and the impacts of those through the 80s and 90s, we saw a lot of filter offshore, and you fast forward to today, I think maybe only 3% or somewhere in that range is apparel is manufactured in the United States. So dramatic change, certainly a global economy, certainly a competitive open market for the most part.
Fox River relies on the town and surrounding area to keep their 170-person workforce strong as they turn out 5 million pairs of socks annually. In turn, the town counts on those Fox River jobs to help keep the area economically viable.
A lot of apparel manufacturing started in small-town America, and you see a lot of that in the Southeast. Through Alabama, the Carolinas, you see small-town America with manufacturing plants that sustain those communities and sustain those families for many, many years. Some towns that still have manufacturing, but it's just a fraction of what it used to be.
Both Roundhouse and Fox River struggle to find experienced workers in rural areas with smaller populations. However, smaller communities do provide some marketing benefits.
One example would be our Knit in Iowa is really the moniker that we claim. We're made in the USA and we're knit in Iowa, and we're very proud of that heritage. And you can create, an identity, which we have over the course of many decades, that connects and resonates with many consumers.
Both companies are hopeful due to the hint of a small resurgence in U.S. apparel manufacturing.
It's not huge, but you're seeing a lot of smaller entrepreneurial operations that are coming into, in some cases, abandoned locations that still have old equipment, and renovating that equipment and establishing brands and establishing a brand proposition around specialty.
And should the U.S. apparel industry continue to grow stronger, Fox River and Roundhouse expect to be right there pushing the needle for another 100 years.
So not all the news is good news, but there certainly is hope for a continued resurgence, and Mississippi will certainly play a role in that growth. Well, next time on Farm Week, an extraordinary encore episode of Extension Matters.
It's a breathtaking view above ground of an amazing underwater partnership between MSU Extension and the Mississippi Aquarium, a spectacular showcase of the extreme wonders of the Gulf Coast.
Visitors get up close and personal with the creatures of the deep, the aquarium sparking their interest and curiosity. Diving deep, that's next time on Farm Week.
Remember, if you missed a story, look for past episodes of Farm Week on our website at farmweek.tv.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and YouTube. See you next week. Thanks for watching.